turning our attention to the Sugar Bowl, which will be a Sugar Bowl in New Orleans. With all that Cotton Bowl confusion, just want to make sure that we've got our game and we got our city set. Texas and Washington, two fantastic head coaching jobs done here by both Kalen DeBoer and Steve Sarkisian. Two great offensive minds. This is why we see this total up at 63.5. I mean, 20 points between these two semifinals in terms of looking at the totals. Quinn Ewers, Michael Penix. Lots of different ways to pick this one apart. Danny, where do you want to start?
I want to start with Washington because I feel like ever since they beat Oregon for the first time, everyone's been sleeping on Washington, including in the Pac-12 championship game where most people thought Oregon would win by double digits.
Here,
we talked a little bit about, I think we all did. The other thing, too, we talked a little bit about this with J.J. McCarthy, the month off. I think this break is huge for the Huskies. We noticed it coming down the home stretch. Dylan Johnson in a walking boot. Michael Penix, what's wrong with him? The receivers, McMillan has been out for a while. He had missed some time. Even Roma Dunze was carrying so much of the load. I think the week off is going to, the month off is huge. And I also thought their defense improved. And that to me is going to be probably the difference one. Like, are we going to get the new and improved or improved? I guess that's probably right. New and improved Washington defense that played better against Oregon, or are we going to get the one that struggled with some of the weaker teams on the schedule? And can they protect Penix? Because I do think this will be the most physical front seven that they faced in Texas defensive line. But they get the ball out pretty quick too. Like he's been in the system for a long time. Michael Penix has. He knows where to go with the football. And if you do bring pressure, there's a lot of guys around to go out there. And as much as we're going to talk about Sark as a play caller, Kalen DeBoer is no slouch either.
Right.
In dialing up. And he's got some depth there. So somebody's going to be, a duck, a fish, whatever you want to call that mismatch, that defender, and they're going to try to locate him. So, some just initial thoughts on Washington and Texas. I think it's going to be a great – I do lean over, too, in this one. I do think it'll kind of live up to it. There's too much firepower on the field.
I think the number one thing I'm looking for, can Texas slow the Washington run game with a light box? Texas has some real beasts up front that Washington just doesn't normally see in that conference, right? Utah is probably the most physical team that Washington saw, and like they gave them some trouble at times. And Oregon has some dudes up front, but they're not. Like, I don't think Brandon Dorlus is a freak, the likes of like a Sweat and Murphy and those type of dudes who Texas has. So can Texas play with the numbers advantage in the back end and take care of the run game? I don't think you're going to shut down the run game, but limit the run game with Johnson and those dudes, because Washington blocks it up real well, and they're clean. Like, they don't make a lot of mistakes. They know who they're supposed to block. They at least get a piece, not a lot of whiffs. Can Texas cause real problems with their defensive tackles in the middle while playing a light box? I think that's really important, because if you look at this, Oregon did not get bombed by Washington on the deep ball in that rematch. Really,
Dylan Johnson.
It was him, and they did a great job with formation and motion to set up a lot of those perimeter screens, which are sort of an extension of the run game, and the receivers all blocked their butts off for each other, right? But part of that was Oregon had to load up a little bit as the game went on against Johnson, and it gave you more better looks to throw those against. And Oregon also clearly concerned about the deep ball. This Texas secondary is probably the weak point of the football team. And there's one on offense I know we'll talk about when we flip to that side of the ball. But to me, it all starts with, Texas has to be able to get a win somehow, somewhere where it does not have a numbers advantage, right? If you're Texas, you're like, all right, I really don't feel great about covering these guys one-on-one down the field. Can we disrupt enough up front against an offensive line that won the Joe Moore Award to give us numbers to combat the screen game, to make sure that we are clean in the back end, to make sure that if we're traveling corners, we're traveling, we're not out of position, right? Where if we're playing more zone, that we keep leverage on it, because we're not so concerned about the run game, because we know even though a man down, we're going to win physically. Like, that'll be an early tell in this game. Can Texas be disruptive against the run game without having to commit too many men to the box?
I don't even think it's just the run game. I just think this game is going to come down to Sweat and Murphy. Like it's for what you're saying to stop the run game for sure. But I also think like Michael Penix is impossible to sack. Like if you look at the numbers, like he never goes down. They never get to him. But Texas needs to get interior pressure from Murphy because like they do bring pressure. Texas is one of the best, pressure rates as far as defenses in the country. And I think that if you can get it from the interior, which is what having Sweat and Murphy gives Texas a huge advantage in against that offensive line, most of the time when Penix is under pressure, it's coming from the outside and he's able to get away to the other side and escape. If you come in from the middle and you collapse the pocket on him, I don't know if he's going to be able to get away because Michael Penix is not the most mobile quarterback in the country. Like you don't see him running a ton. He's typically a pocket passer who will move around and, find open lanes to get the throws down. So if you can get that pressure on him from the middle, that's how you're going to slow down this Washington offense. Because if you don't, like you're mentioning, Bud, their secondary is their weak spot. Rome Odunze and those guys are going to get open, and Penix is going to hit them, and they're pretty much going to be able to, name their score, and then it's just going to become can Texas match and keep scoring as many points as they can. I think they can. I think it'll be a fun shootout. But I do think that one area, depending on how well that goes for Texas or how well it goes for Washington, that's the team that's going to win.
Bud, what do you think is the weakest part of the team? You mentioned it earlier for Texas.
I think defensively, it's the
back end. But what about the offense?
I also am interested to see, I think having Ford is a big advantage in this game. Can Washington confuse a young player like Hill, who's got a boatload of athleticism? But I mean, Washington does so much stuff with shifts and formation and motion. How much does having the run up to this game, the 15 practices to rep it, how much does that help you? Right? Like, can you send this stuff? I think it probably helps some. On the flip side, I think that for a weird reason, Texas is not great in the red zone. If I'm Washington, I don't think I can cover these guys with my guys down the field. But I can maybe win in the red zone because Texas has shown a real ability to kind of mess around. Sark does such a damn good job. We talk about big game Sark, and Sark is a play caller. And, formationing and motioning, just like DeBoer does, to get the matchups that he wants and to get his guy on your duck, if you will. But that's harder to do in the red zone, right? And Ewers is really good at hitting these wide open guys because Texas schemes him. And he also can make some tough throws, but he's not been as good in the red zone. So if I'm Washington, I want to force Texas to beat me in the red zone. And I don't really love my guys trying to cover Mitchell. And if Worthy's healthy, and
I think so I was looking at it, he's practicing, I know he was on crutches at the end of the championship game, but even like a week ago, he said that Xavier Worthy was back. My anticipation is he's good to go. As dangerous as Xavier Worthy you should expect him to be, I think he'll be ready to go for this one.
I think he matters. With how much they move him around and his threat to just take the distance, I think he really matters.
Danny, what's the Texas thing that stands out to you?
I'm curious to see the backs because CJ Baxter has been kind of the lead back. Is he there? Is he up to speed? Pass protection, kind of filling in that role. Jonathan Brooks was one of the better ones, and they've been without him for a while, so it's not like he's breaking in brand new. But I'm curious there. I'm curious to see if they can establish the run. Can they start running the football, kind of control that line of scrimmage? That is where I do think Texas has the advantage along the offensive and defensive lines. And so can they establish that and kind of impose their will in what's a very, physical game? And, it's something it has been brought up about the red zone inefficiency for Texas. It is a little bit perplexing, but definitely is something real. So if you can kind of keep everybody in front of you, not let them give up the big ball, get them down there, force them to field goals, that's a huge win if you're Washington.
100%. We've been talking about Texas's red zone woes all season long. If there's if there's an aspect to this where Washington would be able to close any kind of perceived disadvantage gap, that would be it. And I'll tell you what, I don't think if I'm Texas, I'd like to put Washington away because I think the reason people are sleeping on Washington is because of all the close games. They won 9 straight games that were decided by 10 points or less. That's bananas. I mean, it is something that we have not seen in the modern era of college football, to be able to string together 9 straight wins of 10 points or less. And so who's got more confidence down there in like those final moments? Kalen DeBoer's got these guys ready to play. I think if you're Texas, you want to be able to jump out to a big lead and then just kind of defend it. If this thing comes down to who is going to make, if it's one quarterback that has to make a play in the fourth quarter of a game, give Michael Penix the edge over Quinn Ewers?
Yeah, I would. Yeah.
Yeah. He's been there, done it more. Quinn's been like hot and cold. He's a little streaky.
Yeah.
Even within games. I mean, look how he started the Oklahoma game. It looked like it was going to be a disaster, and he actually rebounded and played pretty well to give him a chance. Took him down the field, and I think that was more on the play call than it was on him to kind of settle and not go for the jugular, but go for the field goal. But Penix has been there multiple times, this season and come out on the winning end.
Tom, what's the best bet for the game? Where are we going?
Over.
All right, who's winning?
You got a coin on you I could flip real quick? I mean, I feel like Texas is the more complete team because I do think defensively I like the Longhorns better than I like the Huskies. But I've said the same thing about Oregon twice now when Washington was going up against the Ducks, and Washington won both of those games. So I'm picking Texas to win the game, but that's just because they asked me for a pick. I have no idea who's going to win the game. I just think it'll be high scoring.
I think Texas has more difference makers on defense, and I'm going to go Texas. Like, I'm not hammering this. I don't think it's a best bet, but if I had to bet the game, I would lay it with Texas. I do think Washington is really good. I just think that Texas has defensive linemen that I think, and granted, Washington has some too as well. Like, it's a good matchup, but I do think Texas has more like special players and like next level guys. So I'll go Texas.
I like Washington the 4.5 for sure. I don't hate them to win the game, but I'll take up those points because I do think this will be a fun game. I like the over too. I think it will come down to that, fourth quarter type game. I just think we've been sleeping on, started the conversation with this. I think we've been sleeping on Washington all year long. I picked them to win the Pac-12 and kind of got off it. I was like, they got some weaknesses. Defense is a liability. They have just found ways to win. They went undefeated in the best conference in college football this year.
I declared them a wagon in like week 4. I haven't been sleeping on anybody. I just think that...
No, I said me. me.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, they've won. So they've won 20 straight games right now. Mm-hmm. And you know what one of those also was? Beating Texas. 27-20 in last year's Alamo Bowl.
Yeah. One of the lowest scoring Alamo Bowls of all time. Disappointing.
They did play like crap for a month.
They did.
Right? Like,
totally.
There was pretty... I mean, there was some reason to get off Washington. Like, they started playing poorly.
Yep.
Honestly, about a month.
And that's where I do think that's where it comes back to. I think they were banged up. I think the season started to wear on them. Lost players at critical positions, or they're playing out there at 60, 70%. But most importantly, they didn't lose.
Yeah, basically you had 15-7 against Arizona State at home, set off a bunch of alarm bells in the immediate aftermath. You then have 42-33 at Stanford. That wasn't great. Winning a shootout against USC made sense. Utah came into Seattle, gave them a fight. 22-20 against Oregon State wasn't really pretty. 24-21 against Washington State wasn't really what a lot of people were expecting. And then that Oregon game, 34-31, but I kind of got Washington having the upper hand in that one the whole way. That was a good job by the Ducks to be able to, come back and give themselves a chance to pull off a miracle. But it's Washington and Alabama are both occupying this space where you're like, I mean, all those close games. And then the other side of it is like, yeah, but they win all those close games. So, all right. So we got
all of them. One of them won them all. One of them lost one.
Oh, sorry.
Don't forget.
All right. So you got Michigan, Danny, you got Michigan and Washington in your title game?
I do.
Sick. All right. And then coin flip. I've got Alabama and Texas. Bud?
I'll go Texas, Michigan.
Okay.
Read
I
the
really don't know.
signs, boys.
Oh,
Read this. We've established games don't matter this year. So the only way that this season can end is Alabama beating Texas in the national title game. It's really the only way that can end.
That's probably
See, we were right.
yeah, that's
See,
the
they
full
got it
circle.
right.
Yeah, that's the full circle. The
Mhm.
CFP and on rules say that that's the way that this should end.